panelists to come on the dais, please. And what Diana said about the cold countries, I can tell you that when we did it in India, if we have a green roof, we measured that on the top floor, actually, you can have 4 to 5 degrees of less temperature. So your air conditioning demand really reduces if you have a green roof. If you have a tree by your side and that puts a shade on the west side of wall, it reduces 4 to 5 degrees of temperature within the home. If you have tree line by the side of the roads in Calcutta city, I measured, it gives you, the shade gives you 4 to 5%. 5 degrees reduction. So if we look into these, which simply means we can avoid so much of energy need by making our cities looking better aesthetically, and I mean, as you said, socially cohesive. So I think there are options which we forgot to look at, and we just thought that we need rocket science to solve all our problems, but we have the solutions, I mean, within our reach, affordable, and which we can really sort out. And what Kiego has already shown that the costs of the demand side solutions are also much affordable compared to the supply side options. And Elena has shown that the digitalization with the right governance can solve our problems socially. And Abbas has shown that we have actually been doing all these innovations for a very long time. And so what is needed is that it's possible, we need to understand that it is possible to get these innovations diffused throughout the different parts of the world so that we can achieve the solutions much better. So what I would like you all, because because of not good behavior in the open forum of the website. So what we had to, we could not get the online questions from many, I mean, participants might be. So what I would like to request you all to answer some of the questions which we can take from the floor here. Yes, please. Would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Hello, I'm Michelle Friend. I'm from George Washington University and Université de Lille, Nord-Europe. And I work on multi-criteria decision aids. And I'd like to thank you very much for your information and for your approach to tackle demand side and not only the supply side. This is extremely important and it's been a blind spot. However, so I'm going to play devil's advocate, and GDP growth is a doxa in neoclassical economic thinking. And what you're suggesting runs counter to GDP growth, because we want to, if we want to grow faster, then we want to use up, we don't want efficient buildings and we don't want durability. So how do you communicate, or, I mean, what you're doing is a bit subversive for neoclassical economists.
Bess, you want to take it? I can just add one sentence here. In IPCC 6 Assessment Report, Chapter 5, what we tried to show is that one of the structural barriers within the society is that we have taken GDP as a progress indicator for a very long time. And we are saying that people do not need products only, they need services. So we need multidimensional metric for measuring human well-being. And from that perspective, actually, we can show that if we change our structural barrier, and if we come up with a new metric, then we can show all these, how it shows up. Even for GDP also, we can show many of the things that how they can actually add up. So it's important how we show it. Yes, Bess.
Yeah, well, the GDP obviously has its own quirks, right? And the way we measure GDP is in this strange way where if you pollute a site and then pay someone to clean it up, actually you are growing GDP while at the same time not improving anything on for anyone, basically, except maybe for the cleaner who now has a job. Um, the same holds for these demand side activities where we measure them in GDP in such a way that basically the more wasteful we do them, the higher impact they have on GDP, simply because that's how it's measured. Um, the paradigm we use in these scenarios and this approach is basically to be agnostic about the GDP impacts. Let's say you can provide the same or higher service levels and so the services that are provided by the energy, right? The getting from A to B, the having your house on a in a comfortable state. If you provide those services better, you can do so by using a lot less energy, and that might have its implications for GDP. It certainly shouldn't have its implications for well-being, right? Well-being should the services that contribute to your well-being should be provided in such a way that they are as affordable and as efficient as possible. And then whatever the GDP implications are upstream, let them be, as long as your well-being is not reduced.
I absolutely just want to add something that I think at the very highest levels of GDP per capita countries, we may have to, this is no official position of EDIT's project, but we are, some of us in the EDIT's project are considering also looking at that perhaps there is sufficiency as well. So also actually in the IPCC, the concepts of sufficiency has been included. And I think also socially, this is already coming up as a sort of a demand. For example, a lot of young people just state they do not want to work 5 days a week. They just go to their employer and say, no, I only take this job if you allow me to work 3 days a week. Clearly, that's less earning, but the quality of life is perhaps better if you're not a money making and money spending machine, but you have also time for actual life. So certainly this is only applicable beyond a certain level of wealth, but I think we do have to give consideration to these issues. And this is within EDIT's project so far. We are mostly looking at decent living standards, so more the bottom that everybody has to, so that if you talk about the donut economy, the bottom, but probably we will have to look at also on the other side.
Kyoko, would you like to say that given this whole political economy era built around the GDP, how the businesses should address these low energy demand scenarios?
Yeah, after the Industrial Revolution, large scale of productions can provide products with cheaper unit cost, but several digitalization technologies and new connections will be able to change to provide demand services with just in time and just for needs that consumers really want to, so without high costs. So I'd like to request two things to business. The first, seeking the demand services that the consumers really want to, considering the preference changes in our society. And the second, seeking the new connections across business sectors based particularly on digitalization technologies. So the LED future, low energy demand future, could bring risks in some business sectors, not response to technology and social changes, but these digital and other innovations will be realized and shift from large dependence on resources of materials and energy, and also embedded energy and energy to larger dependence to digitalization with larger values or services, high, larger serving high well-being should be considered. New business opportunities will also exist and increase greatly. Okay, thank you.
Any other question from the floor? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for a good presentation. I like the idea to go to the demand side. My name is Albert Martis. I'm the head of the meteorological department of Curacao, an island in the Caribbean. Our biggest issue as our building is the cooling. That is one of the issues we have. And we're working on it because we want to give a very good example. But actually, the biggest problem that we'll face, we have to first invest. And after 4 years, we will be able to get it back. But that investment is actually, since we are an agency of the government, that is a little bit difficult in order to get funds for that. That is one of my questions. And since we are here talking how to start implementing this type of good practices, I see there's also in the SDGs, there is cities, I think it's SDG 11, I think. How can we then combine the efforts together with the national committees of SDGs so they will be able also to look at the demand side? Thank you very much.
I would take up your first question that, so basically, if we look at the, again, IPCC report this year, then we said that we do need new financial models and the business models to get into this kind of businesses, which you said. So in many countries, actually, they are coming up where new financial investors are encouraging this kind of business models because they are seeing business in these. And yeah, the other question you talked about is how I mean, in different sectors, this can come up. So basically, there are many cross-sectoral benefits also. Say, for example, if you do the business and mobility sector together, compact cities together, then there will be more benefits coming across different sectors. So that is also very important. And Diana has something to add to that. And Elena is also there. Elena, whenever you think that you want to contribute, just raise your hand. We can give it to you. Diana.
Thank you. And thank you for the excellent question. And yes, we all face in the public sector these difficulties of upfront costs versus operational savings. And that's definitely something that George very well addressed. On the other hand, on the cooling, I think there is a lot we can do also without just having to invest very low very high efficiency cooling systems. As we already illustrated, really shading works very well. Although I don't know so much the Caribbean climate, so you know better. If it's humid, then it's more difficult because humidity is much more difficult to get rid of. But sorry, but what the other point I want to make, and I think it's really important for these negotiations, is, for example, about dress codes. For example, in Japan, it's I really think the world should adopt Japan's example of the cool biz, which means that during the summer months or the hot season, they are not in the public sector, and maybe they could tell better, but as far as I understand, you're not allowed to wear a suit and a tie, but you have to wear the business etiquette clothes is a short sleeve. I really would like to achieve that for the next COP, also Antonio Guterres and the chair of COP28 shows up in short sleeves. And that way shows that everybody should take off their jackets And that way you can set the thermostat higher in the whole COP in a hot climate. Of course, not if it's Europe, but if it's in a hot climate and hot season, then this could really have a major ripple of effect in the whole world in reducing cooling energy needs, because a lot of the cooling are culturally determined and not necessarily based on human needs. Of course, there are periods and heat waves and so on when it is based on human needs, but I think that we can tell a lot, we can do a lot.
I'll give it to Bas, but then just to add, we actually measured, in India, in very hot city of Calcutta during the top summer months in May, June, July, with the dress code, you can actually reduce 25% of cooling need. So it's not that small number. Yes, Bas.
Yeah, no, two aspects basically to your answer. I think on the one hand, in the past century, more or less, of relatively cheap energy, we have all collectively gotten a bit lazy with how we think about energy and how to use it. And especially if we think about, the architectural sector or builders, it has basically faded as a consideration in their designs and developments. And we are now entering, of course, this phase where energy should become, again, a consideration when you design a building. And a lot of knowledge exists from traditional times, from before the past 100 years of cheaper energy, of how to build buildings in such a way that they actually are comfortable. And we need to regain that knowledge basically in our designs and building practices to design the buildings in such a way that they don't need that much cooling anymore. The other aspect of this is the innovation in the business models. If you, on the one hand, have your builder and you only look at what it costs for the building to be built, and the builder does not care about your first 10 or 20 years of operational energy, then these two incentives basically are not combined. But if you can find someone who can say, okay, I built this building and I make sure that it is comfortable internally for the next 10 or 15 years, and you pay me this amount for that, that would be your normal building cost plus normal operation cost, then it is their incentive to make the building as energy efficient as possible and provide you with the best services and comfort levels. And if they do so in a much cheaper and efficient way, it is their gain and their profit. And so combining in the business models, basically the use phase and the buildings phase, and so sell the service, not cut it up in these individual packages, would really change the incentive structures for those who do the design and build the building and need to live in it.
There are two more questions. I take this one first. Yeah.
I'm Pawan Singh, and I'm from Delhi, India. And the issue of the GDP versus, having a cleaner atmosphere. In fact, they are not at dichotomous. In fact, if you don't have a clean air, you cannot have a proper GDP, because I'm a member of CII, Confederation of Indian Industry, Confederation of Indian Industry, and founder member of the CEO Forum for Clean Air. And we did our research and we have found that, not having clean air is contributing negatively to 3% of the GDP. So it doesn't work that way, because cities and places or countries attract capital, they attract companies' headquarters, which are clean and which provide an environment where people come and live and they invest. So they're not dichotomous. But I would give two illustrations as to support the viewpoint. The way the economic engineering is happening. Like, for example, we are working with Swiss Development Agency, and we are working on models with the airports, and where we say that, the air conditioning system will be supplied, they will not be paid. The point you mentioned, not based on the asset or the acquisition cost, but it will be based on the units of power supplied. So, so they will try to, provide certain kind of cooling at certain cost. So it will have efficiency versus GDP and GDP together. I'll give another example how, in fact, inefficient like power consumption in the state of Delhi, where we had state, government utilities running the distribution system. And there, we brought private sector to do that. And there used to be commercial losses as close to 40 to 45%. Now, that period, the power consumption was growing 8 to 10% because people were not paying for it. So when reforms happened and the AT&C losses came down from, say, 45, 50% now to 7 and 8%, the power consumption has gone down. So, not necessarily this kind of a GDP growth is good for the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very good examples. And there is one more at the back, please.
Thank you very much. As you can see, I'll take short sleeves any day. The fascinating examples that are here are food for thought, of course. By the way, my name is Faiz. I run the Yunus Center at the Asian Institute of Technology. One of the things that I notice in most of these conversations is that the emphasis is on voluntary participation. The emphasis is on behavior change, inductions, incentives, inducements. We often we don't talk about the regulatory side of things that much. So I'd like to ask the panel, all of you, if you like, to say how much of the way, halfway, quarter way, more than halfway, is the regulatory side of things going to match all these other incentives that we are so enthusiastic about and we wish to take. But we often see that sometimes the best of intentions do not match the stick part of stuff. And sometimes it is so obvious that we are avoiding confronting powerful interest in industry, in some of the entrenched sectors in energy, that we kind of cop out of regulatory enforcement. Any thoughts on that would be very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a really excellent question. And I think the IPCC report, for example, very well showed that if we only go from the individual direction, then, and George can probably correct me if I'm saying this wrong, we cannot really save much more than 5% of emissions. However, if our individual actions and choices are enabled by a systemic change, where the systems allow such choices, the right choices, then actually you can go up to, as Josh said, up to 70% reduction. You're absolutely right. Not only the governance is critically important, the infrastructure is very important, but I think there are some very good cases of good governance in that. In the US, excellent fuel efficiency standards and energy efficiency standards have been. In Japan, also the Top Runner program has really changed the whole world's energy efficiency. In Europe, the energy efficient buildings directive has been helping a lot. Now, of course, not from climate consideration, but the energy crisis consideration have said that you're not allowed to heat your home or your office more than 18 degrees or 20. So they put a cap on it during the summer when there was water shortage and big drought. For example, France prohibited the use of private pools and even considering private jets. So I think there are initiatives, but you're absolutely right that regulation has to go hand in hand. But I think the trouble is that in some countries like the United States, the culture is not so favorable towards regulatory solutions, and there you can achieve less.
But just half a minute, and then I take Elena, and we are running over time.
Yeah, just one very quick point is that indeed, regulatory approaches are really important here to help, because otherwise you only make your own services worse if you do this voluntary in many cases. The advantage is that it can start local. You don't need national or large-scale policies for this to happen. Every city or village can basically adopt their own regulations and start going in this direction.
And I think California was one of the major examples towards that. Elena, would you like to make a short comment You are
Absolutely.
online, but we don't want to forget you.
Don't worry,
Uh,
don't worry. I totally sign what my colleagues already said. I just wanted to point out, and I think it goes very well with the last interventions, that I think the importance of the mind-side interventions should be really built into decision making, but it also needs to come from the bottom up. We don't have to make the mistake to impose demand-side solutions from the top. I think Bas was really pointing this out in his last intervention. It is up to the communities, to the local level, to also be active in this respect. So I think that this would be my, let's say, only thing that I would like to stress. For this thing to work, we need to go top down, and the regulation should be a regulation that provides a space for people to make choices which are consistent with reducing emissions at the local level. So allow bottom-up action, basically, an agency. And here digitalization can help a whole lot. Thank you.
I think Elena had the last word and the best summary of the session. So with all these, I'll thank you very much. And our journey just begins.